up, guys? It's Blake with Whitewater Reptiles, and today we're going to talk about bearded dragons. Now, this is my friend Angus. As you can see, she's missing a couple toes here, as well as a couple in the back, and actually a little bit of the end of her tail. Now, she came to us this way as a rescue about 7 years ago. Overall, though, she's in very good health, and we're happy to have her here. Now, bearded dragons can range in price anywhere from free, say all the way up to $5,000. That's the highest I'm currently seeing on Morph Market. The first thing we want to consider when talking about bearded dragons is the enclosure size. Now, the bare minimum enclosure size for these guys is going to be 4 foot long by 2 foot wide by 2 foot tall. The second thing we want to talk about is UVB for bearded dragons. Now, this is absolutely essential for these animals as they will need that direct sunlight, or artificial sunlight, if you will. These guys originate from Australia, which is a fairly arid, desert-like environment. When we're talking about UVB for bearded dragons, we're going to want to go with two of the main name brand companies. These are going to be Arcadia or ReptiSun. Now, if you're going with Arcadia, the bulb you're going to want is called 12%. ReptiSun is going to be 10.0. Now, ReptiSun specifically, I know has a T8 bulb, which will be an over-screen bulb, and you'll be looking at a 12 to 15 inch above your basking area, where the T8 bulb will be under screen, and you're looking at about 8 to 10 inches from your basking area. Another thing to consider about that UVB is how much of the enclosure should it cover? Well, realistically, you want it to cover at least half of the enclosure, and again, we're looking at a 4 foot long enclosure, so you want at least a 2 foot bulb. Realistically, you want that to cover somewhere between half and maybe 2/3 of the enclosure. The third thing we want to talk about is that basking area. Of course, these guys coming from a desert climate, they're going to want a high temperature basking area. So you can use a 100 watt basking bulb or a 90 watt halogen bulb to keep that temperature high. On average, we want to keep that basking spot at about 105 degrees. So we're going to want to keep that bulb about 8 to 10 inches above the basking area and make sure that temperature is somewhere between 100 and 110 degrees. The easiest way that I've found to keep track of the basking area, as well as the heat on the warm side and the cool side, is to use something called a heat gun. I got this one on Amazon. They range somewhere between, I think, $10 and $20. This thing is absolutely great to keep track of that. It's basically just a little laser gun that you're going to take here, point somewhere, see that little red dot, and it's going to tell you what the temperature is. Another great thing to have are these little thermometers that also tell you the humidity. I keep one of these on the warm side as well as the cool side of her enclosure, as well as various other enclosures in the reptile room. Seeing as how these guys are a desert species, we're going to keep that humidity a little bit lower. We're going to keep it ideally around 20 to 40%. However, we can see a humidity increase at night. Upwards of 60% would be fine, but we definitely don't want to see it spike higher than that. So an interesting fact about bearded dragons is as juveniles, they're actually going to have a diet of about 80% insects, 20% plants. Whereas adults, like Angus here, she's going to eat about 80% plants and 20% insects. Now, what does this mean? What do I mean by plants? Essentially, collard greens are going to be the staple of her diet. Things such as turnip greens, mustard greens, dandelions, etc. Mealworms are not my favorite feeder insect. They are high in chitin. They can be hard for them to digest. I recommend things such as dubia roaches, silkworms, butterworms, hornworms. Personally, I like to feed black soldier fly larvae if you can get them. I go through dubiaroach.com. They are fantastic. You can always go to a local expo. I'm sure you'll have a supplier there. When we're talking about feeder insects, it's important to know what size you should feed your animal. Now, for bearded dragons, we want to feed something no wider than the distance between their eyes. Sorry, Angus. These guys are diurnal, so they're going to get a lot of sunlight or artificial sunlight from your UVB bulb. However, we are going to want to dust those insects probably 2 to 3 times a week with vitamin D3 supplement. I personally use ZooMed ReptiCalcium. I've had great success with this. There are other brands out there. Just make sure you do your research on what you personally buy, but I've had great success with this. One more thing I want to cover about these animals is bathing them. Now, you'll see a lot of videos online of people bathing their bearded dragons, and something to consider is stress for the animal. They don't drink much, I will say that. You should absolutely have a water dish in there for them. It should be offered at all times. It will help keep that humidity up just a little bit, but they do drink, or at least Angus here does seem to drink when she gets a bath. I would say bathing should be done when they're dirty. They do like to walk through their poop. Angus here will get the occasional blueberry treat or something like that and get it stuck or stained on her. She'll get a bath from that. I'm going to say maybe once a month. Once a month would probably be okay. You're going to want some warm water, but not hot by any means. And just let them hang out in that for a few minutes. I typically put it in her enclosure and just let her hang out in it for a few minutes. Maybe she'll drink a little water, clean herself off. I'll wipe her off very carefully and let her go on with her day. The last thing I want to say about these guys is, are they beginner friendly? I think that's kind of up to the person. How much research have you done? I think you should heavily research any animal you're looking to get, but these guys especially are going to need a lot of research. Personally, I am not going to say they're beginner friendly. I think if your heart is set on one, it's definitely a doable pet. It is definitely a doable first reptile. However, I would recommend a crested gecko or a leopard gecko over one of these guys as a first reptile, or maybe for someone a little younger that isn't quite ready to commit. I actually have a video on crested geckos and their care right here. You can click and watch that now if you're interested. They require a little less maintenance, a little less work, a little bit cheaper to take care of, a little easier overall. These guys can be very rewarding. Angus here has been my friend for a very long time. I wouldn't trade her for the world. I hope that this video taught you something. I hope that if you have one already, you guys are enjoying them and you're having a great time together. If not, I hope this video helped you make a decision on whether or not they'll be a good fit for you. Well, hey guys, I appreciate you watching. Go ahead and click like, comment down below. Let me know what you'd like to see next, and we'll see you in the next one.